So when you become an associate professor, a lot of things change in your life that you don't think would. And what this is a moment in your life where all of a sudden you have sort of reached the mountain that you're climbing. You reached somewhat of the top of the mountain that you've been climbing for years and years and years, like 15, 20 years, maybe more for some. And you go through a lot of weird realizations in many different ways. And I want to talk about that because I think it hit me hard. And I think it hits a lot of people hard. After you go through this, you sort of push away so many things in your life to get to become that associate professor. So what that is a stage, and it's called a little bit different things all around the world, but within the traditional American system, that is after you get often you get tenure at the same time. Not always. Many institutions it's different, but most institutions you'll get tenure at the same time. And it's not necessarily a guaranteed job. I don't think people understand that. You can still get fired for many different reasons, but it's just a little simple tip of the hat to you that you've done something and you've actually accomplished something. And it's this weird moment where you've put in a great deal of work to actually get there. And then once you get there, you realize it's very anticlimactic. Nothing changes, nothing at all. The same structures are all in play. The same life that you actually have is still the same. It doesn't change at all. And you thought it would change. You thought life would get better. Life would become something vastly different than where you are. And, all of these opportunities would open up. You'd get recognition. That's the hardest part for me is when I went through this, I thought, finally people would recognize me. Man, does that ever not happen at all? Does that finally, would I get valued? Or, I thought I would get valued to some degree for all of the effort that you put in. And there's all these stories that are told. It's really hyped up. It's a very heroic story that everybody talks about to actually get tenure someplace. And when it happens, absolutely nothing happens. And it's such a strange moment. I remember going through, it didn't even happen like immediately. But I remember going through all these vastly weird stages. Because it happens at a time when many of us have other things going on in our life. Kids and family and all these kind of things. And it's just, I remember it being such a emotional journey to deal with this, of recognizing like, wait a minute, nobody cares. They don't. And that's where I had to like redefine who I was. I'm still struggling with it. I'm still sort of figuring out what I'm about and who I am. But it's a sort of moment of realizing like nobody cares. The rest of the world does not care. And I have to figure out, what do I do? How do I perceive myself? What is it that I'm about? And the thing that I realized, the two big things that I realized, that I'm perfectly good with who I am right now. And it took an awful lot of work, at least for me, maybe not everybody, but it took an awful lot of work. I'm perfectly good with who I am. And if other people don't like that, fine. That's their problem. It's not me. I'm not the one that is dealing with that. So I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly fine with who I am at this moment. And then the other thing is learning how to just block out the rest of the world and not care about what everybody else thinks about who I am and what I'm about, and really just be okay with me. And, coming back to the world is not as big as you think it is, and you can't change everything. It's not going to be this sort of big grand awakening. The only thing that you could really change, the only thing that you could really focus on is yourself, and focusing on, how do I interact with the world? What is it that happens? And I think, I've become very bitter with how all of this works. And a colleague of mine told me it was maybe cynical, but I think I'm actually bitter. Where I just distrust the rest of the world. I know what actually is good. I know who's good. And I think I'm just going to pursue those simple things, whatever those simple things are, that I know is, hey, people are actually trying and doing a good job and recognizing that those things are the things that actually matters. And it hasn't changed. I think about everybody else through graduate school, my undergrad, that didn't do that they sort of rushed through the system. I think about somebody that was part of my life at one point and I wanted to rush through everything and didn't sort of respect the respect how difficult things are, respect the sort of what it means to do something that's good. And I think about that person and where they ended up in life. And it didn't take long. It took, a decade or two, and their life completely fell apart. It completely fell apart, and it's a really sad story, at least in my eyes. And I think the only way that I can keep myself from becoming that person is closing out the rest of the world and focusing on the things that I know are good, that are true, that are, that make a difference. And so whether that means that there's lots of things I'm not going to get credit for and nobody's going to notice and I'm going to be undervalued, man, I'm going to be bitter as all get out because of all of that stuff. But I'm still going to pursue them. I'm going to say, the rest of the world's not going to care. Who cares? Who cares about that? I'm still going to pursue the things that I think are important. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, stay in the whole academic game forever. If there's something else that comes up that I think is extremely important, that is helping out people, that is helping out my family, that is helping out me, whether it's climbing Machu Picchu or whatever, right? Like something, I'm gonna do it. And then I'm gonna tell to the rest of the world, who cares? I think it's a moment where you just simply say, I'm good enough. I truly am good enough. And not anybody other than myself has to say anything about it. And if nobody likes it, tough. I'm doing the right thing. and I know I'm actually doing the right thing. Nobody else can say that except for me.